Welcome back to the TEFLology Podcast. As everyone knows, the whole world is being affected by the coronavirus pandemic, and this is particularly true with regards to employment. For teachers, this has forced many to turn to online work or has increased the precarity of their positions. These effects, of course, vary from job to job and from country to country, depending on both the scale and the response to the outbreak. As such, in lieu of a regular episode today, we bring you some stories from teachers discussing how their jobs have been affected by the current global situation. We put out a call on Twitter asking for anyone who was interested in sharing their story to get in touch, and while we received a number of inquiries, we're pleased to be able to present stories from 3 teachers. In this episode, you will hear from Mustafa Nazari, who is based in Iran, Robert Playfair, who is teaching in the UK, and returning guest Anna Loseva, who is currently working in Vietnam. We asked them to discuss some questions related to the pandemic and how it has affected their teaching. We'd like to thank them for contributing their stories, and we hope you enjoyed the episode.
We first asked the participants to introduce themselves and describe their usual teaching situation.
Hello, my name is Mustafa Nazari, and I've been teaching English in Iran for more than 9 years. I got my master's degree in TEFL back in 2016, and now, thanks to coronavirus, I have this opportunity to tell you about the current situation regarding English language teaching in Iran. Due to my research interest in computer-assisted language learning, I joined online language teaching schools, and I've been teaching students abroad for 3 years. And I also had my offline teaching in my language school. I had students from different levels, starting from zero beginners up to C1. However, my language classes have been integrated with TEFLology too, where I have been using different applications for creating, delivering, and assessing the tasks.
Hi, my name's Rob Playfair. I work in the Language Centre of a university in England. My job involves teaching on a pre-sessional English course and also developing the assessments for it. At this stage of the course, these assessments are usually high stakes. If students fail, they can't progress onto their degree programmes and they may lose their study visa.
Hi everyone, my name is Anna Loseva and I teach English in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. My context is as follows. I teach English for academic purposes for students who are planning to enter the main program of my university, as well as academic English skills for freshman students of that university. So this is an international school of business who work in partnership with the University of Economics and in Vietnam, in Ho Chi Minh City, as well as Western Sydney University from Australia. So I believe I'm in a very different, privileged situation.
Next, we asked the participants how the COVID-19 situation had unfolded in their location and to provide an overall picture of what's been occurring.
The number of infected people with coronavirus has been increasing in the last days, and Iran was actually the second country with the number of infection before the outbreak in Europe. So the situation is not very good in Iran concerning the number of infected people and also the mortality rate. The schools have been closed a few days after the detection of first patients with COVID-19. And this wasn't a good news because March 20th was the first day of Iranian New Year, which is also known as Nowruz. So I think it was a bad time for coronavirus to come to Iran, and because of this, the infection progress is also increasing. And according to the authorities, if people do not consider social distancing and self-isolation, especially during the New Year holidays, the infection rate will keep increasing and the situation will be worse. So this is horrifying for Iranian people since majority of them have planned to travel around this country and see their relatives in New Year, as it is a part of Persian culture and tradition.
In England, nearly everyone at the university is now working from home. There are still some staff on campus to support students who have nowhere else to go, and some researchers doing some work into coronavirus and other things that they need to be there for. But the entire language centre where I work is working remotely. The plan is to deliver the rest of our pre-sessional course, including all of the assessments, online. And that's a total of 20 weeks from April to September.
I was supposed to have my class, to be back to class on the 4th of February after the vacation. However, on the 1st of February, I believe, I got an email from my school saying that due to coronavirus danger of spreading, we have to postpone the beginning of classes for 1 week. I thought that, well, maybe it has to do with the fact that our school does have some international students. And then at the end of that week, we got another email saying, well, we're going to have to start teaching online. So for the next week, let's teach online. And I held a makeup class that week, and it still was not certain that it's going to be lasting for so long. But basically, my first online teaching experience had to be on the 11th of February. And since then, I have not yet seen my students face-to-face, and it has been teaching on Zoom the whole time. Well, I think the first measures, the government here takes really serious measures about this, but not too serious, but one step at a time. And because it has been unfolding since the beginning of February, maybe it has been quite successful, to touch wood. So yeah, since the 1st of April, we are encouraged to stay home. Everybody's encouraged to stay home. Nothing works except grocery stores and pharmacies, which is a usual situation in many countries now, I think. However, it's okay to go for a walk. You will not be fined. You have to wear a mask, and everybody complies with it. And in fact, I have been self-isolating and not going to teach in the office, which I did at first in February and early March. I used to go to the office and teach from there. It felt like more professional, and the internet connection worked well. But I think for about 3 or 4 weeks, I have been teaching from home and only leaving home where it's really necessary. And a lot of the people here use delivery services, and it's really common and widespread service in Ho Chi Minh City. So yes, of course, a lot of businesses and small businesses are closed. And now we're all waiting here. My students have been in their homes since the beginning of February. So that's the picture at the moment. To be honest, you're not asking that in your questions, but I have to say that, because I don't think that the information about Vietnam gets a lot of coverage, at least in my feed on social media, but I have to say that I feel safe enough. And currently, on the 9th of April, Vietnam has reported number of cases is 251. I hope they will be safe.
We also wanted to know how our participants' teaching had changed as a result of the COVID-19 crisis in their area.
I may be among the 1% of teachers in Iran who has been practicing online teaching before this crisis. Therefore, switching my Iranian students from offline classes to online ones through platforms like Zoom was not a big deal. The majority of teachers inside Iran are not acquainted with online teaching and tools. This is not because of the lack of facilities, since everyone got smartphone and internet is widely available. The main reason is that the majority of teachers need some kind of education in the fields of technology integration and blended learning in and also outside of the classrooms. Also, I remember during my bachelor's studies in TEFL, we had the course called CAL, but the focus was not that deep, and the teachers were mainly dealing with theories and information written in certain textbooks, rather than providing the TEFL students with some practical applications of such tools. And on the other side, the Ministry of Education is trying to engage students in learning during this crisis, but it doesn't seem to be very effective, as they are providing some free TV programs early in the morning, and some of them are actually not very efficient according to the feedbacks from the students. But the teachers are also trying to communicate with their students through social messaging applications like WhatsApp or Telegram, and some of them are using this kind of applications as a base for their teaching.
We haven't actually started teaching yet, but in the past few weeks we've been preparing for online delivery due to start in April. We've been trying to make as small a change as possible from the face-to-face course materials and assessment, but in some areas it looks like we're going to have to make bigger changes because there are things that just don't work well online. For example, in previous years at this point, we used a timed exam to measure students' listening and reading skills, much like the big exams do, like IELTS or TOEFL. However, this doesn't really work with online delivery, as we have no way of knowing if the students are using a dictionary, translation tools, or a friend to answer the questions. So the scores that we get from these tests would be highly dubious. But saying that, our admissions department still want us to provide scores for these skills. So the main part of my job over the past few weeks has been working with a couple of other colleagues to kind of consider the options that we have to do this remotely, and kind of try to reduce the security issues. In doing this, it's kind of raised a whole bunch of issues.
I guess I would start from, I don't truly know how others are teaching because of this crisis. I know for sure from my social media feed on Instagram and Facebook of people who I know teach in Ho Chi Minh City in particular, that public schools all schools are closed and have been closed for 2 months. And as far as I know, a very limited number of schools probably provide online classes, such as my school. In some cases, I guess teachers assign weekly homework, so the students are supposed to just keep up with their learning on their own. But really, I'm not a good source on that information because I just know one person who said that's how it happens. And then, in my case, I said before that I believe I'm in a privileged situation here because my students are come from well-off families. This is an international school, and they aspire to go study in Australia and study business and international communication and international business. And every student in our school has a computer. This is almost like a requirement to have. I think it's impossible to study without a computer because they have assignments that they use an online learning system to submit their papers. So students were just expected to join classes via Zoom. Some of my students joined from their phones, although this is discouraged by the program. But they do their best, of course. So I teach online, and that means that all of my sessions are expected to run according to our schedule, just in an online format. So on the 11th of February, when I had to teach my class, and my classes run for 3 hours at a time. It is a 3-hour class with a 15-minute break. This is one type of class, and the other type of class is 4 hours at a time with a 20-minute break. So I'm expected to deliver the same content, basically. Students are expected to stay online the whole time and do all the assignments. So to the question of what adaptations have been made, the first thing I had to do is to make sense of how I can possibly make my interactive classroom work in this Zoom room. Luckily, I learned very soon about breakout rooms, and I said that it's impossible for me not to have them. I just don't see how 30 students, my class on average is 30 students, sometimes it's more, how we're supposed to work with the syllabus without it. So in the beginning, my reaction was a lot of, it's impossible. I don't know how we're going to do it. It's just impossible. For one thing, some of the assessment items in the course are group presentations and group debate, where 3 debates of 6 or 7 groups are happening at the same time, simultaneously held in the classroom, and then just walk around, and everybody's got their side, and the other groups are judges. So I could not believe that it's possible to do in the Zoom class. However, I just learned that anything is possible, given the mindset, given the situation. Basically, I have no choice, and of course, I could have a choice, to change the assessment. This is a course that to make some adaptations on in a deeper level, not on just the class-to-class level of the plan adaptations, but in the end, somehow it works out. I think the biggest learning for me in the very beginning, maybe it was my mindset in the beginning or something that I wanted to believe in, is that, well, I know that this is very new for me. Before that, I had used Zoom for my own learning, as well as hosting and participating in reflective practice meetings. Just a couple of times, maybe once on Zoom. So I did not have experience teaching on Zoom. But then when suddenly I had to teach, and I had to think of what I'm going to do with a class full of 25, 30 students who also have this as their first experience with online learning. They have never even been in rooms like that. I mean, in web online classrooms like that. I just felt a lot of compassion to them, I guess. And in the very first for a couple of weeks, I started my class by saying, well, can you hear me? And so on and so forth, working with the technology, making sure everything works, just talking to everyone in the class, saying, hey, can you turn on your camera if possible? I want to see you. Can you wave? Can you smile? Are you okay? Can you say something? Or type in the chat. So that I decided that spending time doing that in the beginning, make everybody feel comfortable, is extremely important. And I still do that when I start new courses, because my courses run for a certain number of weeks or sessions, and then I get a new portion of students. So it's a cycle every time. And then also what I thought is important is to be extremely honest with students. And in the beginning I said that, hello, here we are. I'm new to this. Is this new experience for you? Have you ever studied online before? Of course, there was an overwhelming no. How are you feeling about this? We spent some sessions doing some activities about pros and cons of online learning early on, and then later as well in their reflections. So whenever possible, I was trying to explain to them that the fact that you have a computer, or a laptop, or a phone, access to the internet, and the chance to spend this time learning should be you should understand that this is a very special situation. There are a lot of students who around the world who don't have access to this. So I hope you can appreciate it and make good use of this time. Because a lot of the students in Vietnam don't have a chance, to keep learning like that, to talk to their peers like that, and to learn from teachers and with their peers like that.
Next, we asked the participants what was being learned as a result of the adaptations they've had to make, and what challenges and limitations they were facing.
Currently, the activities of the teachers for teaching English is limited to sending text and voice messages in specific groups, or in some cases they may receive photo of students' homework for correction, or some of them are sending some videos to improve students' listening and introducing some grammatical topics. But in general, teachers' lack of knowledge in computer-assisted language teaching is related to the wrong choice of these platforms because the 4 skills of language are not being practiced well in this case. And this is also another question that we need to address in terms of the efficiency of these social messaging applications. However, in my case, I was successful in changing the mentality of adult learners about online classrooms, as I previously thought that these classes only work with my foreign students. But now I've been working with Zoom platform during this COVID-19 outbreak, and I'm enjoying great features like being able to make groups and dividing students into a certain number of speaking groups so they can have their own practice. And I like being able to manage the classroom, like having students actually let you know before they talk. And also screen sharing and interactive whiteboards are also on my favorite list, because students are able to communicate with the teacher and other students at the same time, and they can feel that this class is online compared with the social messaging application. So my ultimate goal was to use the most effective kind of applications to get positive feedback from the students, at the same time motivate them for learning language through online tools.
So some of the challenges we've had are things that we've known are a problem for a while, actually. For example, in the past, we've often talked about the negative washback from our reading and listening exams, because once teachers and students realised that the reading and listening exams are short answer, multiple choice, fill in the gap questions, just like, IELTS and TOEFL, the focus of the course then becomes to prepare them for this by doing lots of test practice, developing strategies for each question type, and it's unlikely that they'll ever be asked to do these kind of tasks again on their future degree courses. So it's kind of counterproductive, because what we really want them to be doing is focusing on developing the academic skills needed for university, like note-taking, developing a wide vocabulary, understanding different types of academic discourse, that kind of thing. So in a way, no longer being able to do these exams at the moment is actually, I think, an opportunity to consider what it is we want to measure that is most relevant for our students. Thinking about washback, and I think that could have a really positive effect on the learning and teaching on the course. My dad said in a Zoom call recently, which is the only way we chat to each other now, when things stop, we have to consider whether we want to carry on with them. And I really hope that we, as a community of teachers and test developers on Twitter, Facebook, through teaching organisations like Barleap and TESOL, the TEFLology Podcast, that we have time to consider and discuss these issues, and hopefully see this moment as a way to move forwards.
I think maybe the biggest challenge for me was having groups of students just start their classes online without first having seen each other face to face. So my first class that I started teaching in February, we had before had 3 sessions face-to-face, and I remembered the students, and they remembered each other, so it was maybe easier for them. But now I'm teaching class of students who, some of them had met each other previously in some other course, in the prep course, but others never did, and now they have to organize their group work because this is part of the syllabus, and some of the assignments are to be done in group. So I'm sure it is not easy for them, and I always think that it's about mindset and what they're prepared what they're prepared to do, how much effort they're prepared to give it. Of course, I think that the online spotty connection and some problems with the devices are the biggest challenge. But then again, they do have those laptops. So I don't know. I think we're in a very special situation. And of course, another challenge for me is that in terms of workload, of course, in the very beginning when I was just rewiring my face-to-face sessions to fit online format, when it took a long time for me to realize that everything that's done in a Zoom room takes 3 times as long as what the same activities would take in an offline class. So a lot of activities had to be cut, and a lot of choices had to be made in that regard. And in the beginning, I would always just honestly say to students, I'm sorry, I'm doing this for the first time, but then I would always offer some alternatives and importantly communicate to them and say, please email me anytime if you have any questions. I might have forgotten something. My connection is not always great, which is also very annoying, but also natural, If students' connections are not good, then, well, teachers' connections can also be not very strong. So I think ensuring that they can feel free to email or reach you in some other way is extremely important. So that they don't feel isolated, And I've had to deal with a lot more emails from students than before, a lot more. Sometimes they ask what sounds like a very minor question, but then again, they just need a quick line, I learned that they don't need to receive a detailed response, they just need an answer to their question. So I feel better about that now, but in the beginning it was quite stressful for me dealing with the influx of emails. Also, in my particular class, a lot of the work has always been done online, and we have a spreadsheet in which they have to weekly upload their homework, that is writing homework, as well as recording their videos. So I found that in that regard, my class is different than a regular English as a foreign language class, So maybe it was easier for me. I'm sure it's easier for me to teach it than just to many other teachers around the world who have to work with a course book. In fact, in my class, there is a book which is more like a guidebook and they're assigned to read it before class. And then in class, we practically work on activities that are related to the chapters, to the content of the chapters. And that has to do with improving their writing skill, improving the essay development, and so on. So some of the activities, as I said, had to be cut because I did not find the way that it's possible to achieve in the Zoom room. But all I said is that I'm doing my best, and my best online is probably not as good as it could have been face-to-face, and that's fine. And at the end of the course, I always ask them to record a reflection on the course and the activities, and this time I asked students, just a week ago, one of the courses finished, and I asked them, among the questions was to reflect on online learning experience. And it was very interesting to hear different ideas. overwhelmingly, they say that they learned that it's not working for them. They want to really appreciate face-to-face connection with the teacher as well as with their group mates, even though there was a chance to communicate in breakout rooms, but they said it's not the same, which of course I understand. At the same time, there were some students who were saying, at first I thought that it's quite difficult and inconvenient, and my connection was not good, and so on and so forth. And then I learned that no, actually there are some benefits, and I can do that. And of course, it's not ideal, but it's the world global pandemic problem, and I'm here and I can learn and I can study. And the biggest thing for me and also for students is probably the impact on health. It's just really difficult to stay focused, staring at the screen, doing various activities related to the screen, connected with the screen, because it's writing for 3 hours straight or for 4 hours straight. So some students mentioned that as well, and I'm worried. I hope they're taking some vitamins for their eyesight. I know I am. So yeah, of course there are challenges, and I'm sure that teachers who teach with a course book, and especially and maybe kids, I cannot begin to understand how they're adapting to this. They're real heroes from my point of view.
Finally, we asked how students, parents, and others involved were responding to the shifts in class arrangements.
According to the feedback from the teachers, the students are not motivated in learning through WhatsApp or Telegram or other similar messaging applications, mainly because they are boring or not interactive and lively. On the other hand, students do not have a direct access to some of these applications like Telegram because of government filtering, so they need to use VPN, and this brings up a serious concern. Having access to VPN means that you have access to forbidden websites such as adult websites, and this is a strong taboo in Islamic countries for teenagers actually to have access to such websites. And also some other platforms like Zoom has blocked access from Iranian IP due to the US sanctions on Iran. So the problems are not only because of the lack of education by teachers in terms of using technology, but there are also some political reasons behind this ineffective type of learning. Also, parents are not technologically literate to have control over the contents that their children are watching. Neither do teachers, of course. So monitoring the students when they are using these platforms will be a little bit challenging. But apart from all these problems, I believe that developing countries like Iran has a good potential to provide teachers with training courses and special focus on online learning so that technophobic teachers can overcome the fear and feel the power of computer-assisted language learning. And this outbreak actually has brought a good opportunity to practice those skills. I personally believe that a lot of Iranian teachers without such trainings in terms of teacher education and technology may lose their jobs in the future due to high demand for remote learning by the technoholic students and students from Generation Z. Also, we cannot predict the future outbreaks and natural disasters. And consequently, we teachers around the world need to educate ourselves with the practices and theories in language learning with technology before it's too late.
In class, I never heard any complaints in class time. We keep moving from one activity to the next activity quite fast. I give time at the end Basically, I try to stay after class ends for about 10 minutes and answer the questions if they have them. I understand that this is a lot less interaction than that they get to have with me and with others. But as I said, we're all doing our best, and this is all we can do, I think. So students' response to this shift is not super positive, but I have to say it's been 2 months studying online for me and for some of my students. It's been that long, and they also have had their other subjects taught online, so they have a chance to, have a variety of teaching styles, I guess, and variety of experiences. Again, teachers are different, right? And the differences would show up in the styles online as well. So that's always interesting for me as well. And when I listened to the students' reflections, I heard some ideas of how I could change my online class in the future. For I don't know how long we'll in Vietnam we will have to teach online, but I imagine it will go on for a while. So I can say that I have been lucky. My students are very lucky, whether they understand it or not. I believe they do. And we're managing. We're managing fine. Take your eye vitamins, sleep enough, talk to students. You didn't ask in your questions to give advice, and I'm not giving advice. I'm just trying to end on a positive note. Yeah, so thinking positive, being positive, trying to be positive for the students as well, I think is important. And I hope everything is going to be fine. Bye-bye.
Many thanks again to our contributors for sharing their stories on today's episode. As usual, if you'd like to get in contact with us, you can send an email to TEFLology@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter @TEFLology. You can like our Facebook page, which is just the TEFLology Podcast on Facebook. We also have a book, Podcasting and Professional Development, a guide for English language teachers. So if you're interested in finding out a little bit more about what we do, please give that a read. We'll be back with a regular episode soon.